Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang arya sachang namasami. So greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Wednesday evening with the Clear Mountain Monastery community. This evening, as usual, I'll give some reflections and then open things up to questions in about half an hour, so people can put questions or thoughts in the comments, either on YouTube or Facebook at any point. So this evening, thought to continue a discussion which I began last week. Last week, I introduced 4 themes for my 4 years of study at Dharma Realm Buddhist University. And in this evening, I think I'd like to go a bit deeper into one of those, which is the practice of the Guanyin Dharmas, the Guanyin Dharmas. This is a phrase that I got from Kittisaro and Tanisara, who were both former Theravāda monastics and now are great lay teachers. And Kittisaro is a good friend now and fellow student at Dharma Realm Buddhist University, who will be graduating soon and who have been teaching a somewhat, in my opinion, very beautiful blend of Theravāda and Mahayana practices for a long time. Really deep practice for both of them. So I thought before I jump in straight to Guanyin, just to acknowledge that the thumbnail for this, Theravāda Guanyin, question mark, is clickbaity. And I don't necessarily think that clickbait has to be breaking the 4th precept, but just acknowledging that. But it is provocative and interesting. And yeah, there might be some element of my psyche that that interest that is there, the curiosity about asking that question, does have an effect on my meditation, choice of meditation objects as well. I have mentioned it before, but for quite some time, my main method of meditation or object of meditation has been the mantra Guanyin Buddho. So Buddho coming from the Thai forest tradition and Guanyin coming from the Chinese Mahayana tradition. And so acknowledging the clickbaitiness of the icon or the thumbnail. Also wanted to issue a Theravāda trigger warning, which just for people who are extremely Theravāda in your orientation, I am too. But just to say, sometimes we can be a bit touchy, and it's possible that I'll say something which you disagree with. And really, I love the suttas. And that's my 3rd announcement before we go more into Guanyin, is just a Theravāda pledge of allegiance. I love the 4 Noble Truths. And the 4 Noble Truths are in the Chinese Mahayana canon. Even if, as I mentioned last week, sometimes they're questioned in certain ways, I love them. They're the foundation of my life, and may they be the foundation for my practice on until Nibbana. I believe in wholeheartedly the topic for frequent recollection that's in the Amaravati chanting book, which we use for Clear Mountain, that I'm the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions. Whatever I do for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. So that's another acknowledgement. I do believe that. And I also believe in and love the 3 characteristics. So as we go on, you might see the reason why I kind of give those caveats and those pledges of allegiance. I don't think they have to, they don't have to be in conflict with Mahayana Dhamma, at least in certain interpretations and my interpretations. And that's another acknowledgement, is that everything that I might say this evening is just my own experience and my own kind of working practice with these things. I am just looking for ways of practice that really go to my own heart. And really, I think that all of us as practitioners have to do that. This might be a long game practice. This might be a marathon that we're on. And I'm not talking about Theravāda being a sprint and Mahayana being a marathon, but even for us, stauncher, the most hardcore Theravādins among us, full enlightenment could be a long time coming. So finding ways which really work for all of us it's an important internal investigation, Dhammavicaya, which needs to be done. So what is Guanyin? Who is Guanyin? So Guanyin is the Chinese pronunciation of Avalokiteshvara. Guanyin is the shortened form. It's the Chinese words, Guanyin, both first tone, for the longer name, Dazi Dabe Guan Shi Yin Pusa. So the greatly kind and greatly compassionate one bodhisattva, Pusa, who observes the sounds of the world. The Shi is the world, and one who observes the sound, the yin of the world. And that is, Avalokiteshvara in Sanskrit can be translated as the Lord, the Ishvara, who Lokita, who is looked down, Ava, down, the Lord who looks down. And so slightly different translations from the Sanskrit to the Chinese, but it doesn't have to be a big thing. You can go onto Wikipedia or read scholarly articles, but for me, the translations don't mean much, but how can I bring them into my practice? So as I mentioned, going more into these 4 Guanyin Dharmas, and I'll just list them right now and we'll go more in depth. So the first one is listening. And with each one of these, I'm going to be introducing a source for each one, which really align quite nicely with the practice at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. So City of 10,000 Buddhas, a Chinese Mahayana university founded by Master Shunhua, also founded the Dharma Realm Buddhist University. He really taught, as I understand it, and have been told and have observed, maybe 4 main sutras or so. The Shurangama Sutra, which is what I take for the basis of this listening practice. The Avatamsaka Sutra, which I don't try to tie into Guanyin. And the Lotus Sutra, which I'll mention in a moment. And several other practices, such as the Great Compassion Mantra. But these 3 sutras, Shurangama, Avatamsaka, and Lotus, really form the heart of practice at City of 10,000 Buddhas. So this practice of listening really ties right into the meditative practice that's taught in the 6th chapter of the Shurangama Sutra. The next aspect of Guanyin practice, the Guanyin Dharma, which I've come to really appreciate, is the wisdom of emptiness, which is found in the Heart Sutra, or the Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra, which is chanted every day in Chinese and English alternately at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. The Guanyin Dharma of compassion, which is really at the heart of the Great Compassion Mantra, which if we have time, I might chant in both Chinese transliteration and in Sanskrit. And response. What does that even mean in a Theravāda context? But to speak about this, it's spoken of in the Lotus Sutra, chapter 25. So this first quality of listening, I've mentioned it before that my kind of pithy summary of Mahayana in comparison to Theravāda, which I've been taking away from these 4 years, is that Theravāda is great at seclusion. So there are many suttas about viveka. It's even one of the Gautami Dhammas, where the Buddha says, the qualities of which you may know, that which leads to seclusion and not to entanglement. You may definitely hold that is the Dharma, that is the Vinaya, that's the teacher's instruction. So seclusion, there's a big place for that. And that can be a power of Theravāda practice and a real feature, a beautiful feature of Theravāda Buddhist monasteries. So Theravāda is great at seclusion, and Mahayana in its best forms are great at inclusion. Theravāda, seclusion, Mahayana, inclusion. And by that, I mean just including all of one's life into the practice. Of course, it is the case that that also is true in the Theravāda, but it's also true that there's seclusion in the Mahayana, but just general tendencies, including things. So I have found it to be, I've been impressed with the quality of listening from different teachers who I've met since I've been at the Dharma Realm Buddhist University. And just as a student, it's been a muscle which I've had to really exercise since I've been at school. I'm not the teacher of any of the classes that I'm in, even when we were reading the Pali Canon. And I mean, I knew the text better than anyone in the class, but still, I'm not the teacher. I have to listen. And I realize that even though I might know a lot more than my fellow students, there needs to be a place for listening and figuring out how to do that. So on the mundane level, just listening to other people. It's a necessary skill for a human life. And this second word in the name Guanyin, so Guan means to look, Yin means to listen. So Yin is that which listens, that which can listen. And I'll read from the Shurangama Sutra, chapter 6. He was teaching the sound of silence. This is a meditative object which Lumpur Sumedho has taught for a long time, which is basically listening to the high-pitched or low-pitched hum, which for a good number of people, not everyone, but certainly for myself, which when you turn to it, it seems to always be there. So this high-pitched sound of silence, or the nada sound. Ajahn Sumedho was teaching that, and one of the monks at the City of 10,000 Buddhas said, I think you've found the Shurangama Samadhi, or this current of the sages. So that's one interpretation of this first line of Guanyin's own practice. The attainment. What was just mentioned, the direction of my hearing reversed. This is a fascinating, just practical meditation exercise. So similar to the practice which Richard Lang talks about in the interview I did with him about having no head, one can turn one's hearing faculty around and just notice that where is sound, this inner sound, this nada sound coming from? And then seeing that this high-pitched noise is not coming from outside, it's not coming from inside. Where is it? Is it in the cochlea? Is it in the eardrum? It doesn't seem like it's anatomically related. It's not some particular small organ in the ear. It's in the mind, it seems. One can't actually, I can't place where exactly this sound is coming from. So using sound as a meditation object and the depths of samadhi and this confluence and overlap with the practice that Lumpur Sumedho teaches so well of the sound of silence. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can, there's many talks by Lumpur Sumedho on that subject, and Ajahn Amaro wrote a whole book on, might even be called The Sound of Silence. So would recommend those. So that's this first Guanyin Dharma of listening, both in its mundane aspect and its more profound meditative insights, meditative experience, and that, experiencing beings and wisdom in all 10 directions is similar to a meditative experience of empty space, or the infinite space above, below, around, and everywhere. Just having overcome a distinction and a prejudice for forms. So the first Guanyin Dharma, the second Guanyin Dharma, is the wisdom of emptiness. And we'll just read the Heart Sutra, which is recited every day, as I mentioned, in the City of 10,000 Buddhas for their liturgy. So when Avalokiteshvara, the Sanskrit name for Guanyin, was practicing the profound prajnaparamita, he illuminated the 5 skandhas, form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness, and saw that they were all empty. And he crossed beyond all suffering and difficulty. Shariputra, and I don't think I'll go into the details of why this seems like Shariputra is the foil character in this sutra and others, which I have to admit I'm not a big fan of. And it does actually decrease my faith that this might be, word of, save that for another talk. But here he is. Avalokiteshvara is speaking to Sariputta, our hero from the Pali Canon. Form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. Form itself is emptiness. Emptiness itself is form. So too are feeling, cognition, formation, and consciousness. Sariputra, all dharmas are empty of characteristics. They are not produced, not destroyed, not defiled, not pure, and they neither increase nor diminish. Therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, feeling, cognition, formation, or consciousness. No 6 sense bases, no sense consciousness, any of the sense consciousness, no ignorance or ending of ignorance, up to and including no old age and death or ending of old age and death. And here, I mentioned this last week, there's no suffering, no accumulating, no extinction, and no way, i.e. no path, no understanding and no attaining. I received an incredibly beautiful and kind email from Doug Smith of Doug's Dharma, really in response to my video from last week, in which I said that the Buddha, the Theravāda Buddha, the Buddha of the Pali Canon, and I'm not necessarily saying that this is, honestly, I don't know how to hold the authorship of Mahayana texts, but it doesn't, this is the point I was making last week, is that I don't think the Buddha would make a problem out of hearing sutras, even if they were phrased in his voice, and even if he did not actually say them, he wouldn't make a problem out of that. Am I saying, therefore, that he would agree with all of this? I'm not sure. This is definitely, as I mentioned last week, not Theravāda Dharma. Theravāda Dharma being that there is suffering, there is accumulating, i.e. a cause. Extinction is Nirodha, the third noble truth, and there is a path. So what would the Buddha of the Theravāda Pali Canon say to this? I honestly don't know. How I've heard it phrased is maybe this is the account from an arhat's point of view. It would be fascinating. I'd love it if there was an account of conversation between this sutra and the Buddha from the Pali Canon, but it doesn't quite exist. But just to continue. Because nothing is attained, the bodhisattva, through reliance on prajnaparamita, is unimpeded in his mind. Because there's no impediment, he's not afraid, and he leaves distorted dream thinking far behind, ultimately nirvana. All Buddhas of 3 periods of time attain anuttara samyak sambodhi through reliance on prajnaparamita. Therefore know that the prajnaparamita mantra is a great spiritual mantra, a great bright mantra, a supreme mantra, an unequaled mantra. It can remove all suffering. It is genuine and not false. That is why the mantra of prajnaparamita was spoken. Recite it like this: Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Paramita Sutra. So, a beautiful, framed as a teaching from Avalokiteshvara, from Guanyin, and really a great tool for me. The bottom line for me is it's a great way to let go of attachment. What do I feel? How does my face feel? How do my shoulders feel when I read something which I'm not so sure about? So at the very least, it's a teaching to teach me about my own attachment to views, but at the most, it's a beautiful teaching on emptiness, which I could certainly learn from, and which many practitioners far better than me have gotten great benefit from through the ages. So the wisdom of emptiness. And just before I go on, I'll just say just a big word of gratitude to the Dharma Buddhist University, all the teachers there, and the City of 10,000 Buddhas. I've been feel very grateful for my 4 years studying there. Was given a very generous scholarship, and have learned a lot about myself and about practice and about the Mahayana vehicle, as well as improving my Pali and getting a little foothold into Sanskrit. So I need to say that because it's true. So the next Guanyin Dharma is compassion. So historically, this is, I think, the reason why the Mahayana vehicle named itself the Maha vehicle, the great vehicle, in contradistinction to what in some sutras is called the Hinayana, or the Theravāda vehicle. Is just this broader idea of compassion that in some sutras do frame it in this way, that somewhat selfish arahant monks just go off and meditate in caves, whereas the real practice, a bigger practice, is one which has compassion for beings. So the sutra to highlight here is I'll just share this one as the Chinese version of the Great Compassion mantra. And some people do relate to this mantra as somewhat of a magical formula, and that is the way it's framed in certain sutras. But for me, I just feel it's an inducement, an invocation to my own compassionate response. And is it possible that by reciting it, I might be able to tap into a deeper well of compassion in the world? May it be so. May it be so. But this is at the heart of the many Chinese Mahayana practices of reciting this great compassion mantra. And this is the Chinese transliteration of the Sanskrit. So that's the Chinese transliteration, and that was the pinyin version, available at the Nila Kantadharani Wikipedia site. And I have a version of me chanting what is called the reconstructed Sanskrit text, which is also on that Wikipedia page. I won't chant that now, but I'll see about putting a link to, I chanted it in the style that I learned in this Sanskrit version in a video we made on memory palaces. So you can listen to that there if you'd like. And why am I sharing this? What does this have to do with compassion? What doesn't it have to do with compassion? I have had it come up in times, especially it's a nice melody. And if it gives me a few seconds of not venting any kind of irritation that I might have, giving me patience for myself or others, then it does the trick. I'm content with that. So you can experiment if you'd like, or if you think it's mystical and mumbo jumbo, not into it, no pressure at all, just skillful means. One can make a case that it could be just as effective as any English word that you might use. Did the Buddha teach any English words? He didn't. So just skillful means. By the way, in Doug Smith's great email, he did mention that he's going to be giving a teaching on Mahayana skillful means, what that actually means. It's not out yet, but I look forward to that and would recommend that for everyone. His channel, Doug's Dharma, he does such a good job at fleshing out different concepts mostly from Theravāda, but also Mahayana and Vajrayana. The final of the Guanyin Dharmas is one which is honestly a bit challenging for a Theravāda mind to get around. At the beginning, part of my Theravāda Pledge of Allegiance was that I do believe the thought, which is one of the 5 for frequent recollection, that I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma. Whatever I do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. One might say, how can that exist? One might say the whole point of Guanyin is that this is a bodhisattva, this is a being who comes down and saves you. And that's why I kind of tap into this Lotus Sutra. I'll just share that just to read a little bit of it. And honestly, I don't know what to think. with this sutra. I have heard it chanted, and it's beautiful when you've got a room full of 150, 200, 300, 400, 500 Chinese people at the hall of City of 10,000 Buddhas all chanting this together. It is awesome and epic, and it makes you want to achieve enlightenment. So, but the English translation, at that time, inexhaustible intention Bodhisattva rose from his seat, uncovered his right shoulder, placed his palms together, and facing the Buddha said, "World Honor One, for what reason is the Bodhisattva Guan called Guan, or the one who contemplates the sounds of the worlds?" And that Buddha, Bodhisattva, said, "Good man, if any of the limitless hundreds of thousands of myriads of kotis of living beings who are undergoing all kinds of suffering here, Guan Bodhisattva's name, recite his name single-mindedly, then Guan Bodhisattva will immediately hear their voices and rescue them." And then it has instances where the Bodhisattva will rescue people from fire and burning buildings, etc. And I don't know about that sutra. It's the heart of Nichiren practice. It's the heart of Tiandai Buddhism. And again, as I've said before, there are practitioners in those traditions who have more samadhi than me, more wisdom than me. And who am I to say that the heart of their tradition is inauthentic? But I don't know how to square away, because it is framed in a very literal. It's framed in a very literal way. But how I understand it is in a metaphorical way. This idea of response after a Guanyin retreat, of which those are very impressive. So one of the main reasons I've been attracted by the City of 10,000 Buddhas is not necessarily by any kind of Mahayana doctrine, but I've visited there many times over the years. It's just 15 minutes, 20 minutes it's about 25 minutes from Abhayagiri. But practitioners there are awesome. You see grandmas in their 70s, 80s, just reciting all day long. And that's what a Guanyin retreat is you go and recite Guanyin's name, Namo Guanyin Pusa, Guanyin Pusa, Guanyin Pusa, like my Guanyin Buddha, all day for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And it's impressive practitioners. You can't deny that. And then at the end of the day, or at the end of the session, you have people stand up and talk about responses, how they were touched by Guanyin or had some kind of miracle occur. And like the sutra, I don't quite know what to think about those. And if it brings someone inspiration, then yeah, to practice and cultivate ethics, virtue, concentration, see the emptiness of things, then that's great. If it encourages someone to give into this other power that I'm not the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, that someone else, some other being is what can grant me salvation, then I don't think that that's not a right view according to the Theravāda Pali Canon. But the type of response which I've actually experienced is reciting Guanyin's name and using it as a beacon, a symbol, a placeholder for a prayer, whatever influences, internal or external, conscious, subconscious, semi-conscious, unconscious, exist in my own mind. May any of those give me help in my meditation, in my life. May I be inspired to go a little bit beyond or a lot bit beyond my egoic self can take me. And reciting Guanyin's name for 8 hours a day on these retreats, I have felt like I've received some level of grace at times. And what is that grace? Is it just some semi-conscious, unconscious force that I really want something to happen and I'm at the edge of my egoic push and just saying, okay, instead of let go and let God, this is my interpretation, let go and let go and let do, as in Buddha, or let in and let yin, as in Guanyin. So something that's helping me let go, whatever it is, I'll take it. So that kind of response, that kind of grace I've experienced. And if it's something outside, if it's a deva, devas do exist in the Pali Canon, and I do believe they exist. Have I seen them? Nope. Have they had influence on me? Who's to say? Could they have influence on me? I don't know. But if they could, if they can hear me, please, all the support I can get from all of you. It's just like speaking to any friend or Kalyana Mitta. Give me some help. You know, we're all, most of us, probably if we're watching YouTube, Patujanas, we're all unenlightened beings, and we're just trying to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and figure out ways to practice the Dharma, you know, bring more virtue and samadhi, concentration and wisdom into our lives. So those are the 4 Guanyin Dharmas: listening, the wisdom of emptiness, compassion, and response. And I'd love to hear people's questions. Okay. Sadhu, 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 with greatest metta and devotion from Singapore. All right, great to hear from you. Heart Sutra speaks to me deeply. Thanks, Ajahn. If you can chant it in Sanskrit. I don't know it in Sanskrit. I have definitely chanted it before in Sanskrit. We were studying it actually in our Sanskrit class, and I may have memorized it at that time, but I know at least one Theravāda monk in Thailand, a good friend, a good person. We don't know each other that well, but Tan Namo, if you're out there, he's got the Heart Sutra memorized in Sanskrit and Chinese and Vietnamese and Thai as well. But yeah, you can memorize it. I think you do have it memorized, maybe Vandana. If not, okay. Uh-oh. Okay. Well, it turns out that when I turn off my video, then the sound disappears as well. Sorry about that. But maybe I'll cut those pieces out of the eventual video. But yeah, let's go to some more questions. Doesn't the wisdom of emptiness only support an understanding of conditionality? Yeah, very interesting question. I mean, conditionality is at the heart of Theravāda Pali Dhamma, Paticca Samuppada, the dependent origination, the Four Noble Truths. Yeah, it's definitely at the heart there. Nibbana is an unconditioned Dharma. And yeah, I think it would depend on who is giving the commentary to the Heart Sutra as to what level of emptiness that's being pointed to. But in a Pali context, yeah, when the Buddha talks about emptiness, it is, yeah, as a tool, a skillful means. And as the Chula and Maha Sunyata Sutta speak about, the Majjhima Nikaya, maybe 121, 122, the emptiness in a Pali context is empty of self, empty of different things. So empty of sound, as people joked when I accidentally turned off the audio. But yeah, it is a skillful means, the meditation, the attainment of emptiness, shunyata, samadhi, does support an understanding of conditionality. One would use this sunyata, samadhi, or even a perception of emptiness, which I think could rightly be equated on one level to the attainment or the practice of the perception of boundless space. That's one level of emptiness of forms. The point of having any of these levels of samadhi is to understand conditionality, so as to go beyond conditionality. Good question. Okay, just a note. Ajahn Amro's book is called Inner Listening. I happen to have it right here. An amazing book. Thank you very much for that. And other people are expressing similar, yeah, appreciation for that book. I've read it and loved it too. Apologies for those sound missings. So note that the mantra, the Great Compassion mantra, is chanted by the Guan school. So yes, Guanyin, I think, is the name of Guanyin. The Thai pronunciation, I'm not sure what country this Guan school is affiliated with. Okay. Other people appreciating Doug's Dharma. Yeah, fully agree with that. Great resource. Venerable, how do you think these Guanyin practices relate to the 11 benefits of cultivating metta? Can we see what Guanyin as a form of the metta queen, Samavati, from the pure abodes to inspire us as Devanusati? Is that possible? That that the one being is Queen Samavati in the pure abodes? I'm not. Can pure abodes beings come back to and be seen by humans? I'm not sure about that, but yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that's mentioned in the Lotus Sutra and the Shurangama Sutra, is that one of the characteristics of Guanyin is that she will change her form and can manifest in multiple bodies, as is also mentioned as a psychic power in the Pali canons, and appear as whatever would be our perfect Dharma teacher. Guanyin Avalokiteshvara will appear in that form. So if we can be taught by an arahant, then Guanyin might appear in the form of an arahant. If we can be taught by a monk, they'll appear in the form of a monk. A nun in the form of a god, then Guanyin will appear in the form of a god. Many Chinese practitioners believe that Mother Mary, i.e. Jesus' mother, was a manifestation of Guanyin, certainly in the way that she's often venerated as this being of great compassion, of mercy, is pointing to a similar archetype. But you also bring up this Devanusati. So Anusati, or recollection of Devas. Ajahn Achalo has written a good book, which I've not been able to find it on the internet anywhere, but I believe it's called Devanusati, where he equates the recollection of the bodhisattvas with this Devanusati practice, where in the Theravāda context, Devanusati is mentioned just in this meditative reflection that there are these beings, these devas, these bright ones who have cultivated morality and samadhi and wisdom to a certain degree, and generosity. I too can cultivate that. So that's the traditional practice of Devanusati. But I know monks who part of their practice is this Devanusati, and it's not just the rote textual reflection from those sutras, the Mahanama Sutta of the Pali Canon, but yeah, seeing light in different forms. So yeah, the 11 benefits of cultivating loving kindness, Majjhima Anguttara Nikaya 11s. Yeah, look into it and yeah, see what resonances and work with you. Okay, the reason why the Chinese translation of Guanyin is because there are versions of his name being Avalokitesvara versus Ishvara. That's right, Svara in Sanskrit means sound, and this Lokita means like saw or looked, whereas Loka means the world. So it was possible that when it was becoming, one hypothesis is that when it was transliterated into Chinese, this Ava down, Loka world, Svara is the sound. So one who looks down and hears the sounds of the world. So thank you. In Japan, Catholicism was banned for a long time, so the Japanese came up with Maria Kannon, statue that looks exactly like Guanyin, but with a cross instead of a swastika on the chest. It's really interesting. Yeah, my My father collects shipwrecked porcelain, and there was a period, he could tell you better than me, but maybe from the 1400s up in through the 1800s, when it became a thing for Chinese porcelain manufacturers, because they knew how to make Guanyin figures, to just, take the pouring water glass out of Guanyin's hands, which is the traditional object which Guanyin is holding in Chinese Mahayana images, and replace it with a little baby Jesus, and then you've got Mother Mary there. So, yeah. Well, that's the time we have this evening. Sorry again about the sound difficulties. I'll erase those and perhaps upload a sound of the chanting, but pasting into the chat the Zoom information. This evening, I won't be there. Ajahn Nisabo might. He's doing a practice for Taizé, the St. Mark service. But Matt Warning and Mary Webster, both this week and next week, will be holding down the fort and hosting those sessions and letting people in. So it's a great Kalyanamitta group over there. So everyone who can, you should tune in to Zoom, and wish everybody a great evening, and hopefully happy experiments working with Guanyin practice. So take care and see you next week.